My name is Lyn Buchanan. I was with the military remote viewing unit, and probably it's best to start with a little bit of history. Back in the 70s, the intelligence people of the U.S. realized that a lot of our top secret information was draining away. They couldn't find out how, and so due to basically Russian defector named Pinkovsky, they found out that the Russians had psychic spies. And everybody had a really good laugh over that. And then somebody reminded them, yeah, but they're getting our secrets. And so basically what happened is that the U.S. said, we've got to look into this. We've got to see if it works. They had a little test program called Scan8. What they did was they tasked some psychics against American top secret information. Well, one of the psychics they tasked was a guy named Joe McMoneagle, and he did a fantastic job. Even it was against the M1A1 Abrams tank, and he even drew an accurate picture of the inside of the tank with the control panels and everything else. That was the first time that the black cars came screeching up to the building and they carted off our safes and tried to arrest everybody, you know. From that and some other things that Mel Riley had done, they found out that this stuff works well enough that maybe we need to look into it as an intelligence collection technique. The problem is that in the United States, if you're a politician and you have anything at all to do with psychics, suddenly you're working in a filling station somewhere because it's political career death. And so basically what they wanted to do was they wanted to find out if this works, see if there's a way to develop it and all, but they didn't want to have anything to do with psychics. And so they started doing some research. They went out to Stanford Research Institute to a guy named Hal Puthoff, and he had been doing some studies. He's a laser physicist. He had been doing some studies on the paranormal and doing some very respectable scientific studies, not just like, most of the studies done on the paranormal. And so anyway, they gave him $50,000 and they said, look, what we want you to do is develop a method or, find out what's going on so that we can basically work this project without having to deal with psychics, because they don't want to deal with psychics. And so he got two people involved, one named Pat Price, who was a retired cop, and one named Ingo Swann, who was an artist who at the time was working at the United Nations. Through their development and their work and all that, one day Ingo said, this is ridiculous. You want to know what's in the box? Open the box. You want to know what's in the envelope? Open the envelope. He said, you give me the coordinates of any place on the earth and I'll tell you what's there. And so they picked a few coordinates and sure enough, he could tell them what was there. One of the coordinates they gave him was wrong. They had transposed some numbers, and it just fate, the transposed numbers worked out to the geographic coordinates of one of the United States' most top secret installations, and sure enough, he found out what was there. Basically, Ingo Swann and Hal Puthoff together developed a scientific process. Now, one of the goals was, since they didn't want to deal with psychics, to find out what goes on in the human mind in a psychic event. And so they wanted to be able to train this, just grab the dumbest grunt soldier off the battlefield train him how to do this, and then have him tell his commander where to point the guns and where the enemy is and what's over the hill and all that. They basically developed a scientific method, but in order to do so, they got completely away from parapsychology. They went into psychology, physical therapy, and several different methods that already deal with the subconscious mind. The basic theory was everybody, you hear people say everybody's psychic, everybody's got the ability. Well, then why aren't people using it? Well, what Ingo pretty well figured out was that the subconscious mind has the information from whatever the psychic source is. That the problem isn't you being psychic. The problem is to get it from the subconscious mind up to the conscious mind. The problem is that the two minds don't talk to each other. They don't even talk the same language. And so basically what Ingo created was a method of interview and report, where he teaches you to sit down, get in touch with your subconscious mind, send a question across to it, and report whatever it answers, hopefully without polluting the process. And polluting the process is the biggest problem of all remote viewers, because the natural tendency is to report what you think your subconscious said, not what your subconscious said. And so it's actually a very highly organized method of interviewing your subconscious mind and reporting what it says. Now, the subconscious and conscious don't talk to each other. They don't talk the same language. They don't even live in the same world. And so what basically they figured out was that, okay, you get embarrassed or scared or something, you'll have a physical response. You'll sweat, you'll blush, whatever. Also, if you consciously want to raise your hand, let's say, you can do that. So your conscious mind talks to the body. Also, the subconscious mind talks to the body. So what they developed was basically a system whereby the body acts as a translator between the conscious and subconscious for passing messages back and forth. The simplest form of this is called an ideogram. Now, because of the method, it's very true that CRV is not a paranormal activity. CRV, controlled remote viewing, is a martial art. And in fact, people who have studied martial arts seem to have a much easier time with it because they sort of understand the process. In the beginning, excuse me, one of the most simple ways to get that conversation started is we have a student say, draw the most minimal graphic representation possible of land. And most people just draw a straight line. Excuse me. Then we have them draw the most minimal graphic representation of water. And most people draw a bunch of waves. And then we do that with several other words. Man-made. Most people usually draw something with a sharp angle on it. Then, just like the kids in their little white outfits and their little white belts in karate class, you have them practice. This is a physical response to an idea. And, you know, the old wax on, wipe off. And when it gets to where that is so ingrained that you do it unconsciously, one day somebody comes with a roundhouse swing and you automatically block it. By the same token, we have people do these ideograms. I have a computer program that will read these ideograms to you. It doesn't get tired, and we'll read them randomly and at different speeds for as long as you want to practice. The idea of this practice is to get so bored with it that you start daydreaming about something else, and you start consciously thinking about something else. And when you do, guess who's doing the ideograms? Your subconscious mind. And so your subconscious learns that land is this physical response. Water is this physical response. Man-made is that physical response, or something like it, whatever you devise. And so one day, and this doesn't take that much practice, in fact, one day you say to the viewer, your target is number 105. What's there? And your hand goes like that. I mean, just as an automatic response, with no more thinking about it than wax off when somebody's doing a roundhouse swing. Then you look at it and you say, well, I don't know what the target is, but look, there's water and something man-made. And you pull the target out of the envelope and look, and here's a ship sitting on the ocean. The response that your subconscious gives through the body has become a language of its own, a physical language. And at its most primitive method, this sets up a line of communications. Once the line of communications is set up with your subconscious mind, I think Bill and I were talking about this yesterday. If all you ever use it for is the paranormal, you're wasting it. Your subconscious knows what your phone number was when you were 3 years old. It knows where you left your car keys. It knows why you do those things that you don't want to do, but you do anyway and don't know why. It knows why. And your entire subconscious becomes an open book, and the life changes are just phenomenal. Plus, if somebody asks you what's locked in a safe, to read a document that's locked in a safe halfway around the world, you can do that too. So this is the basis of what's called controlled remote viewing. Now, after that first stage where you do the ideograms, comes a second stage where you get more and more physical contact with the site. And you start actually kind of seeing colors, but sort of like a daydream. You smell smells, but very vaguely and all that. And as you work through, you gain more and more contact with the site. And as you progress, getting this contact with the site, the smells become stronger, the taste becomes stronger, the textures that you can feel, the colors, everything becomes stronger. And pretty soon, you're going along and you know what's at the site. Now, one of the most important things is about CRV, you never go into a trance state. You never do any of this, gaga stuff. We had a senator come one time. See, we were funded 1 year at a time for 24 years. We had to go through all kinds of dog and pony shows and prove ourselves every year in order to get funded for the following year. And he came and he said, I'm supposed to vote for whether we're going to fund you for a year or not, and so I want to see what you do. And so we said, okay. And he said, I brought a target that I don't know what it is. One of my pages put a picture in an envelope, and I don't know what it is, so you can't bleed me for any information. You can't pull any information out of me because I have no idea what it is. And so he kept the envelope in his briefcase. We went over and gave some coordinates, and the coordinates are just random numbers. They really don't have any meaning. And they're just, as the viewer writes the coordinate numbers down, it gets your hand going, and then the ideogram happens, and you're off and running. And so one of the main reasons for these coordinates is to actually get you moving. And so we went over and did a session. And after the session was over, the congressman came back and he said, to be honest, I'm totally underwhelmed. He said, I wanted to see something psychic, and all I saw was two guys sitting at a table smoking and joking, and every now and then one of them would write something down. And our director still hadn't seen the target, but he thought, well, either we can do it or we can't. And so he took the viewer's summary and he said, well, here's what they wrote down. See if it matches the target. And that's when the congressman reached in his briefcase, opened the envelope that somebody had given him, and he had the target here, and he had the viewer's summary right here, and he kept going, damn, you know, and we got funded that year. So, you know, the process works. At its most severe, it works extremely well. A lot of people think this is an out-of-body experience. It's not. You stay right there at the table. You're wide awake, and you're doing a scientific process that has thousands of rules, and these rules are so intricate that you have to stay focused on the rules with your conscious mind. When your conscious mind is focused on all these nitpicky little rules, your subconscious is free to go get information. And we liken it to the president of a company who has worked hard to become president of the company. This is the conscious mind. And one day the owner of the company walks in and says, I have a kid that I want to teach to be president of the company, so I'm going to have him take over for a week. And the president of the company, the conscious mind, says, like hell, you know, not taking my job. And so then the owner of the company brings in the kid, and it's the president's son. Okay, now you got a quandary here. The president wants the kid to succeed, so all the way through the week, he's going to help the kid. And then the kid comes up with this great idea that the president should have thought of years ago, you know, that's going to make millions for the company. And the president says, that's great. I'll take care of that next week. You know, don't let the kid get too good. And so anyway, at the end of the week, one of two things will happen. The kid, the subconscious mind, will either say, I failed, but only because you wouldn't let me do the job. Or he'll say, I succeeded, but only because you wouldn't let me do the job. And either way, you lose. So, knowing this, most forms of parapsychology, or many forms of parapsychology, say, okay, let's take the conscious mind and send it on vacation for a week. And so you go into a trance, you go into an altered state or something like that. Well, back to the analogy, here's the president of the company sitting on the beach in Tahiti. And there's his cell phone right here. Every 5 minutes, man, calls this secretary or that secretary. How's the kid doing? You know, what's he doing? Well, don't worry about that. You know, stall him for a while. I'll get back next week. And if you've ever done anything with hypnosis, you know, they say you can't hypnotize somebody to do something they don't want to do. When you become a CRV monitor, you can watch a person under hypnosis, and you can see them. Conscious, unconscious again. Conscious, unconscious, checking back in. When somebody goes into a trance, these trance channelers, if you're trained to be a monitor, you can watch them and there they are, conscious, unconscious again, out of their trance and back in. And you can see it. Once you learn how to see it, it's like a neon sign. And so that doesn't work either. So with all these rules and regulations and methods and protocols and all that that Ingo invented, What happens is, according to the analogy, you put the president of the company down on the loading docks and keep him so busy on the loading docks that he can't get in the way anymore. Keep him just busy from morning to night, through the entire week. And at the end of the time, the kid has had a chance to run the company without interference from the president, from the father. And this analogy explains basically what you're doing in CRV. CRV has dozens and dozens and dozens of rules, columns that you write things in. If it's a noun, it goes over here. If it's a preposition, it goes over here. If it's a descriptor, an adjective, or an adverb or something like that, it goes over here. And so your conscious mind has to be down on the loading docks. An impression comes in, and it has to figure out where to stack it on the page. We have all these different columns. And so by doing so, it keeps the conscious mind out of the way. The conscious mind is busy. It's not on vacation. It doesn't have a chance to check back in. And the subconscious mind can run the company for a while. And when you set up a situation like that, to where the subconscious mind can be in charge of the session, you wouldn't believe what kind of information is down there in your subconscious mind. And it comes out. It learns to come out. And it will come out in a physical way. You will, if it's hot at the site, you'll actually start feeling hot and things like that. And so this is basically the underlying theme of what's called controlled remote viewing that the U.S. military used for basically 20 years to spy on other countries, to find out what was in the minds of foreign leaders, what were the plans and intentions, to do personality assessments of foreign military leaders, political leaders, and business leaders, and so on, and to brief all the way up the chain of command to the president the next day's plans and intentions and so forth. In fact, you remember when they tried to get the hostages in Lebanon, the Marines, and the helicopter crashed because of the sand and all that? Our group was doing a session at the time. The viewer who was doing the session popped out of session and said, "Oh no, the helicopter crashed." They immediately reported it up the chain of command, and our message got to the president 10 minutes before it did through normal electronic channels, through normal reporting channels. We had many successes like that you probably won't hear of. And we had many successes. In 1995, the CIA came out and admitted that they had been using remote viewers for 24 years by that time. And they said, but we have done a study and we have found out that it's really not effective, and so no good ever came of it, so we're dumping it. After 24 years of dog and pony shows and renewing it every year because of its effectiveness. And everybody believed that about as much as they believe anything the CIA says. And so, nobody was really fooled. But the end result was that they were able to get rid of the project. The Cold War was over. All of the government was losing personnel slots. The unit had been moved back to the CIA. It was the bastard child of the intelligence community. Everybody kept shoveling it off to somebody else. They'd use it and then shovel it off to somebody else. And so the CIA didn't want to give up the slots for it. And so the CIA just basically disbanded it. And so that's basically the history of the remote viewing. We were tasked against, like I say, military leaders, political leaders, business leaders, We were tasking every war. Saddam Hussein didn't stand a chance. We had a report going all the way up to the chain of command every day on his plans and intentions for the following day. And in fact, 3 days before Chernobyl blew up, I had told him, you know, we had done a session. We had told him, you know, it's going up. Total meltdown. And sure enough, there it was. The higher levels had seen what we could do. Okay. However, I need to caution everybody that there is no intelligence effort that they will send out the troops on the word of one intelligence effort. When they got our information, then they would look for spy in the sky satellite pictures to confirm it. When they got spy in the sky satellite pictures of a building, let's say, and they knew that it was not a milk factory, it was actually a chemical weapons factory, they would confirm that by coming to us and to other intel sources and all that. The government never sends anything out on the word of one agent or one group. One of the things that we found, well, Joe has said several times that the feedback that you get on any session from the CIA, don't believe it. The only believable feedback from the CIA is when the black cars roar up to the door, they bust the door down, start carting off the safes, then you got it right. Then you know you got it right. I have actually had them tell me that I was not cleared for the information that I wrote down in my session summary, and they would stamp it with a clearance I didn't have and take it away from me. And so, you know, you're not allowed to see this again. You're not cleared for this. What do you mean? I wrote it. Very interestingly, about a year ago on Sydney, Australia television, there was a report where some government spokesman was saying that they knew exactly what was going on in that island up there that was having all the rebel problems and all that. And they knew exactly what was going on up there because they had documented source, and it showed a couple of sheets of paper that were handwritten. And for the general public, they wouldn't notice, but the format of it was in CRV format. And so obviously Australia has tapped off the technology, and they're evidently using it. CRV goes in basically 7 levels. We teach you 6 in the course I teach, and we teach you how to recognize the 7th level when it just happens, because it will just happen all by itself. Each stage has higher, better contact with mental contact with the target site, and in each stage you can do more and more complex work. The work that you've heard about at SRI, finding the lost nuclear warhead and all that, Ingo only gave them through stage 3. And what he gave to the military was up through stage 6. And so when we teach, that's what we teach. Now with stage 6, I break the teaching up into 3 separate classes. So does Paul Smith, by the way. We teach exactly the same English 1 course. You learn stages 1, 2, and 3 because that will cover the basics of everything you will ever do in remote viewing. But it covers them in their most basic form. Then the intermediate course puts all that stuff together and gives it in more complex forms, so that you can do some really phenomenal work. For most people in the civilian arena, that's really all you need. That will be 95% of all the stuff you'll ever use remote viewing for. If you want to come back for the advanced class, that's where we teach you the really, really neat stuff. Mapping, drawing maps, drawing the floor plans of the building where the hostage is held. The stuff we teach there, you can actually, if you practice and all, you can actually get to where you can read documents that are locked in safes. And timelines, yeah. So you can get accurate histories of anything. You know, history is written by the victors. You can get the accurate history. And if you dig deeply enough, you can even find the evidence that will lead you in factual research to the real history, not just what's written in the history books and all. When the CIA came out with their statement, they came out and said, yes, we've been using remote viewers for the past 24 years. However, they didn't tell anybody what remote viewing was. They just said it's a form of psychic spying. Well, the newspapers had a field day with it. However, they had no place to get any information. Everything was still classified. So they started calling anybody who had a palm on their lawn, you know, and they started interviewing psychics who had absolutely no idea what remote viewing is. And basically, out of all that turmoil came a situation where the psychics learned the term remote viewing. And all of a sudden, people were calling themselves palm remote viewers and crystal ball remote viewers and tea leaf remote viewers. And everybody who had ever done anything psychic, I had one call me one time and said that right after he was born, he caught CRV and has had it ever since. You know, and finally, I just quit.
You should have told him for $1,000 to tell you how to get rid of it.
Yeah. After a while, I quit trying. Right now, because that happened and every psychic out there said, what I've been doing all my life is remote viewing. So therefore, the definition of remote viewing is what I do. There are so many definitions for remote viewing right now that it no longer has any meaning. This is sort of a trick answer here, okay? Remote viewing, generally you can sense when somebody's remote viewing you, especially if you're trained in CRV, because you become very sensitive. You can generally sense when somebody's remote viewing you. If a Russian is remote viewing, psychic spying, the same document, you can tell. However, no CRVer controlled remote viewing. No CRVer has ever been caught by any human or animal at the target site, has never been sensed by human or animal at the target site or by anywhere else. You get a target site and you're remote viewing it, or you're psychically spying on it, and I'm spying on it at the same time even. With CRV, I will see that you're there, but you won't see that I'm there. In fact, this is one of the main reasons they used CRV over all the other techniques, is because it's not traceable, it's not detectable. Therefore, see, the value of CRV is not that we can get the information. The value of CRV is that you can go into their safes, get the information, get their plans and intentions, and because they don't know it, they won't change those plans and intentions. That's the real value of CRV. I have to say it that way. I really didn't want to get into that.
Well, you don't have to
Well,
if you don't
no.
want to.
We have been detected while doing CRV on ET sites. There is a certain, there's not us and them. There's us and them and them and them and them and them. There is a certain species of ET that will catch us every time. And they have the capability. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do. But as far as the real world here is concerned, okay? Actual applications, police applications and all that, no human and no animal has ever sensed a remote viewer. No human or animal has ever caught a CRV, or controlled remote viewer, because we're not doing anything psychic. Now, what's called these days a remote viewer is just a new term for the old word psychic. And you get a psychic, a natural psychic, and they go plowing into a site. Sure, animals can detect them being there. A CRVer can detect them being there. Another psychic can detect them being there. But nobody has ever caught a CRVer, a controlled remote viewer, using the military method. Basically, the dynamic difference is that you're not doing anything psychic. You're sitting there interviewing yourself. There's no trance, there's no anything. And you're sitting there just interviewing yourself. The subconscious mind doesn't go to the site. The psychic is sending part of their mind to the site. The CRVer does not send part of their mind to the site. Their mind stays right there, and you just interview it. You ask a question to the subconscious. It asks it to whatever the source is, comes back with the answer, and gives you the answer. And so you don't go to the site in CRV. This conference this is the 5th year. For the past 4 years, we've had almost completely CRVers. Well, up in the higher stages of stage 6, we teach you how to use CRV to tap into the talents and abilities of regular psychics. And in order to do that, you have to know what regular psychics are doing and and so on. And so this year, we've asked Noreen, who's very talented, and to come explain what she's doing, how to do it, and so on. And Gail, the idea is that by sharing this knowledge, the ability will be shared with other people. And we have some CRVers here who will then, be able to progress and actually use stuff that Noreen, Gail, and other people teach them. Because one of the things we have found out over a long period of time, we may have a really neat method, and it may be very, very effective, but it's not the only method. There's a lot of talented people out there doing a lot of really good work and really good things. And, like Noreen. And there's a lot to learn. So, by far, this is not the only method. In fact, the military itself had 18 highly formalized methods of, quote, remote viewing, back when remote viewing meant a scientific method rather than a palm on your lawn. And of all of those 18, we used one called CRV, probably 90% of the time. We used another one called ERV about 4% of the time, and one called ARV, which John will explain to you in pretty great detail because he's kind of cleaning up on the stock market using that. And we use that about 1% of the time. The reason you use ARV is you use it when you have a limited number of choices of things that's going to happen. E is called extended. A is called associative. I'll be teaching associative dowsing. Dowsing is another one of the methods that in the higher levels you bring in and use in CRV. You can't use CRV in dowsing. You can't use CRV in ARV. You can't use CRV in palm reading or anything like that. However, you can use all of those things in CRV. And so this was another reason the military used CRV almost exclusively, is because you can incorporate into it all these other abilities and talents that everybody has. So, so it's sort of the big daddy of them all. Now, if you've read Psychic Warrior by Dave Morehouse, almost everything that he does was his favorite method, ERV. That's where you lie back, you get into a hypnagogic state, you get questions and you answer from that hypnagogic state and so on. ERV is called CRV's sexier sister because it's very sensual, it's very, I mean, the pictures roll by and you feel things and you float through the air and all that.
Someone's asking you questions.
And someone's asking you questions the whole time. Now you'll hear people on the internet say, I do ERV. That's not true. ERV has been done worse than CRV has. ERV requires a trained monitor. Without a trained monitor, you do not have ERV. You have what? Visualization, guided visualization. The trained monitor has to be one who can take you into the hypnagogic state, which actually has about 40 different levels. And each level is best suited for some ability. Like one level is best suited for asking you a question, but not for answering it. So this monitor moves you up to that level where you can get a question, and then will move you to the level where you can answer that type of question, and he will keep you there in those 40 different levels for 2 and 3 hours at a time, never letting you go to sleep and never letting you wake up. So without that trained monitor, you don't have ERV. Now, there are only 3 of those in the world, and all of them have said they hope they never hear of remote viewing again. And so, so effectively, ERV is dead. And everybody that talks about ERV on the internet, and I do ERV, you know, they don't. They lie back, give themselves a cue, and go to sleep for a while and come up with an answer, which is not saying it's bad. It's just saying it's not ERV. The prime directive in CRV is that the viewer is in charge of the session. Now, a monitor is a person who sits across the table and is there to serve the viewer's every need. When the viewer wants the coordinates read to them, you read the coordinates. When the viewer moves to the next page, he's been writing and moves to the next page, you give him the page number so that he doesn't have to think, what page is it? And, you know, when you get 99 pages or something, you get a stack this high of papers and you drop them, you need to have them numbered. So it's very important to number the pages. And so the monitor is there to do that. The monitor is there to keep the viewer out of trouble. The real CRV has some dangers to it. I'll be honest with you about this right up front. It has some dangers to it, and there are times when the viewer can get into serious trouble that can be extremely dangerous to the viewer. It's the monitor's job to make sure the viewer doesn't do that. Now, those are generally at the higher levels, and by the time you finish the course, when I teach the CRV, I take one viewer and have them view, and the other viewer and have them monitor, and I teach the skills of both. And then I switch. This one views now, and this one monitors. And then, right near the end of the course, I generally say, okay, now I want you to monitor yourself. Now that you know the rules and regulations of monitoring, I want you to monitor yourself. Did that with this last class of 5 people, and had 5 phenomenal sessions because they were well monitored. The person sat there and monitored themselves. The person, I would have them do it out loud. The person would say, okay, the coordinates are, and they would say the coordinates and write them down as they did. Usually the monitor says the coordinates and you write them down. When you finish, the monitor is supposed to say, there may be other Getalts at the site. Would you like to take the coordinates again? And I actually had the viewer sitting there by himself say, there may be other Getalts at the site. Would I like to take the coordinates again? Yeah, I guess I would. Okay. And so give himself the coordinates again. And so I teach you how to be your own monitor. And along that line, it becomes a safe thing for you to do. There are dangers to the real CRV. I tell all my students, this is not a toy. This is the real thing. People can get hurt. I have come out of sessions with broken ribs. People have come out of sessions with black eyes and things like that, simply because, you know, somebody at the target site will have broken their leg and the viewer limps for a week, you know. And so there are dangers to this. This is the real thing. It's not a toy. I'm just not a voodoo type person, you know, a mystical type person. I tend to be real world. And so my belief is that when the person I was viewing, and viewing very closely, had accessed very well, broke his rib, my muscles tightened up so tight because I was feeling his pain. My muscles tightened up so tightly that I broke my own rib. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I just, I don't know. I've been remote viewing and doing mental miracles for 18 years now, and I still have that reserve that says, I don't want to believe in voodoo. You know, I want to believe in a scientific process that I know it works. Bingo had a big paying contract from the government. And so when you have a big paying contract, as the only expert, you know all the answers. You have to know the answers. And so somebody said, where does the information come from? And he said, the Matrix. And they said, oh, you know, it sounds better than, I don't know. But the fact is, we don't know where the information comes from, and it's not a concern of CRVers. People tell me that it's from spirit guides, and I say, oh, well, thank you for that information. They tell me it's from holograms in the sky. Oh, well, thank you for that information. Some people tell me it's God and angels speaking to your mind, you know, and I say, oh, thank you for that information. I don't care where it comes from. I just want to find the missing kid. I want to know where the atomic, you know, stash of atomic warheads are. And the only thing I know is that when I ask my subconscious mind to tell me how the kid's doing, it'll come back with the answer. And where the kid is, who's got the kid and all that, that's what I want to know. 2,000 kids go missing in the United States every day. Now, about 60% of those are runaways that come home. That still leaves about 800 kids that go missing and don't ever get back home every day in the United States. We don't have enough viewers to even make a scratch on the surface. And that's one of my big pushes. A Gestalt is a basic concept. The subconscious thinks in basic concepts. Probably the easiest way to explain it is with the word ending "iness." If the subconscious tells me that there is water at the site, I know that there is wateriness, which is important to the site. I don't know whether that's the ocean, a drop of dew, or a floating little ball of moisture that's in a cloud or in a misty night, something like that, or a glass of water or something. Or, sweat that drops off on your shirt. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a start on the session, and that's a gestalt. Your mind says, I don't know what the site is, but I know that there's wateriness there that's important. There's man-madiness and there's landiness, okay? And maybe there's some spaciness or something like that. And so it tells you just the basic gestalts. Because when you first access a site, your subconscious doesn't have any information about it. That's why we don't believe it's all contained in the subconscious. Somehow the subconscious has to go out somewhere, get that information and bring it back. And there's a process that you can actually see going on when that happens.
So you're looking for more gestalts, more items.
That's right. Well, in the beginning, more items. Let's say that the subconscious comes back and tells you there's land, water, and something man-made. When you go into the second stage, that's when the monitor says to the viewer, oh, describe the man-made. Okay, well, it's silvery, it's big, it's round, The viewer has no idea what it is. One time, probably the most perfect session I ever did was Skip Atwater was my monitor, and I had told him that the target was land, and that the land goes up on this side and down on this side. And I left a gap in there, and I was drawing this on paper. And he said, what's in the middle there that you didn't draw? And so I touched that area, and I said, oh, it's very hot, and there's fire coming out of it, and molten rock and everything, and it's all just going up, and there's smoke and all that. And so he said, okay, what is it? And I thought, I told you what it is. I said, it's land that goes up on this side and down on that side, and there's a hole in the middle that has all this molten rock coming out. And he said, what do we call that? And I thought for a minute, and I said, I don't know what you call it. I call it land that goes up on this side and down on that side. And he said, okay, we'll end the session. I wrote down session end, and I looked up at my sketch, and I said, is this a volcano? And he said, yeah. And it was, he pulled out a picture of a volcano erupting. But during the session, I have a little thing here that says describe, don't identify. The minute you put a noun in there and you say, this is big, this is red, this is noisy, this is mechanical, like a fire truck, you have just polluted yourself. And from that moment on, if you're not very careful and stick to the rules, man, you're on a fire truck going to a fire. Your imagination takes over. This is what's called a stray cat. It's the viewer's biggest enemy. Stray cat stands for the subliminal transfer of recollections, anxieties, and yearnings to consciously accessible thought. So your memories, your fears, your desires, and all that bubble up with the perception to your conscious mind, and there's the pollution.